Good morning. I'm speaking today with John Engel. John is chairman of the town council here in New Canaan. He's a real estate agent in town. He owns commercial real estate in town. And I wanted to speak to you, John, about what I read today about Waveny House and ADA compliance and $1 million. What's going on at Waveny House? What's that debate about?
It came up 2 nights ago at the town council meeting, and $1 million was requested to bring the town into ADA compliance at Waveny House. And a lot of the members of the town council said, why do we have to spend this money? And it was explained that there was a law passed in the 1990s that says that towns have to bring all of their commercial buildings into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Right, so tell us, before we get into that little nitty-gritty a little bit, for folks who are watching this who don't know what Waveny is, what's Waveny in New Canaan? What is Waveny House?
So Waveny House was a house built about 100 years ago, big brick mansion for the head of one of the major oil companies. And that was sold or given to the town in the 1970s. And it was intended that it would be a park and it would be for all of the residents of New Canaan forevermore.
How big is the property?
It's about 200 acres.
Okay, that's a big piece of property.
Right, so 200 acres, several stone buildings, and the mansion is really the centerpiece, the crown jewel in New Canaan.
And folks love to schedule weddings there,
right,
and big social events there, right?
So you have small events happening every week. The Rotary Club meets there every Thursday and has a lunch. The Poinsettia Club might have an evening dinner there. And it's rented out to residents and non-residents for weddings and other events.
And are there permanent offices in that building now?
Yeah, so there's about 9 employees of the Parks and Rec Department on the 2nd floor. And one of the points that was made the other night was, well, if we do not bring the building into ADA compliance, then we're not going to be able to use the 2nd floor. We'll render the 2nd floor useless. We're going to have to take the Parks and Rec Department out of the 2nd floor. The second thing was, if you don't put in an elevator, you're still going to be required to build ADA compliant bathrooms on the 1st floor.
This is federal law, right?
Federal law, 1990s.
We're talking about Justice Department enforcement, right?
Right, and so that was one of the more dramatic moments of the meeting was they said, well, if you don't do this, the Justice Department is going to swoop in and shut down Waveny. They're going to swoop in and do an audit of all the buildings in town, and all kinds of bad things and fines could happen to New Canaan. So there was a good deal of fear of the consequences of not complying with federal law.
Fear, it's a terrible thing. As you understand it, John, are there exceptions regarding the ADA as they may be applied to historical buildings?
So that's a good point. We have a lot of old buildings, historical buildings in town. And so my experience with a commercial building in town, when we asked Brian Platts, the head of the building department, he said that when the law says that when you spend a significant amount of money on a building, restoring a building, expanding a building, then the ADA law comes into effect. You are expected to spend money bringing your historic building into compliance with the law, insofar as you can.
But so that language is pretty discretionary, right?
Right.
It's pretty open to interpretation.
Right.
Is there a balance to be struck, in your opinion, here between spending $1 million or tearing down Waveny House and making best efforts to make it compliant while still maintaining its historic character?
I think we have an obligation to make sure that we understand the law and that we get into compliance with the law. Beyond the law, we have a moral obligation. We don't just stop at what the law is. We don't just say, well, it's a historic building. We have exemptions. We don't have to do this. There's a feeling that we have a moral obligation to take the crown jewel of New Canaan's buildings, our most beautiful park and our most beautiful building, and really make it accessible to Americans with disabilities, to allow people to be able to use both floors. So we have an obligation beyond the legal obligation. We have a moral obligation to open up our buildings. That being said, we have to do it with some sensitivity to the historic nature of the building. We can't just tear up a whole wing of the building in order to build an elevator. We have to spend some time on this. And I'd really rather not have a gun to our head.
Sure.
That we have to do it this year, with the very first plan that comes before us.
I like that you come around to that larger question, which I think is a question and a topic that I know resonates with both of us. that idea that regardless of what the law may be, the law establishes boundaries, it establishes minimum levels of conduct for us as we walk through our daily lives and operate our businesses. There are larger obligations, right? And in this instance, we want as many people as possible to be able to enjoy Waveny House, right?
Right.
So people rely upon the law, and they say this is what the law says, but we also want to do the absolute best that can be done that may be better than what the law says. Is
Right.
that fair to say?
Right.
All right. So is this debate going to be continuing about Waveny House and making it ADA compliant and how to go about it?
Well, I think what we discovered at the town council meeting is that we really want to understand this design versus alternative designs for an elevator, alternative designs for ADA compliant bathrooms. Should the recreation department be occupying offices on the second floor of an historical building? So we want to open up really the larger question of what is the appropriate use of the building and how do we make it accessible?
John, thank you. Really, thank you so much for meeting with us this morning, talking about these topics. It's fascinating, and we'll be talking about this some more, okay?
Great, thank you.